talk more about the situation of women and girls in Afghanistan, I'm joined on the set by Annette Young, the host of the 51%. Annette, here we are, almost 2 months since the fall of Kabul. Has anything changed for women and girls?
Well, let's just take a look at what the situation's like, Jenny. And yes, older girls are still not back at school. There are no women in senior positions in the government, and the Taliban has shut down the Women's Ministry and replaced it with the Ministry for Vice and Virtue, which that itself says a lot. This is the Taliban had said at the beginning that women will be allowed to work just in a small number of jobs, yet women are still being banned from most positions. They're also finding it harder to express their anger or dissent. We've seen a number of protests in recent weeks and they've been met with violence, threats, this, according to Afghan specialists, is saying, well, that's to be expected, because the reality is that a group like the Taliban often struggle to make the transition from being a group of insurgents to actually running government. They don't have the experience, obviously, to run or govern a country as such, to deliver sophisticated services. In fact, their main strength is controlling security. So what is the best way of getting the message across to the general population that you can do that? You tell the women in your country that it's not safe to be on the streets, that they can't go out without a chaperone, that they shouldn't be at places of employment, they shouldn't be at school. And viewed through that lens, restricting women's freedom serves as a very powerful demonstration of their own power. And it shows that implicitly that they have enough capacity and willingness to use violence to basically re-engineer public spaces. So against that backdrop, it's not surprising that we are seeing what we are, with the fact that women are still staying at home because they're being told by Taliban officials it's not safe to be anywhere else.
Is there any sign at this point that the Taliban might listen to requests or even demands from the international community to try and protect women's rights?
That's a big question. Now, many would argue the only way that the Taliban has changed in the last 20 years, is the fact they know how to tweet, and that they also know how to play to the international community. They now have spokespeople speaking in English in wonderful sound bites. And so there's a disconnect between what they're telling the foreign media and the international community versus what's actually happening on the ground. The reality is, for instance, the UN's mandate is to still try and work with the country's government regardless of what colour, or shade they might be. But this raises tensions. So will the UN, by providing Afghanistan with the urgent help they need, effectively empower a violent regime? Now, many are saying, look, the UN must use this situation, use all its tools at its disposal to ensure the basic rights of Afghans, and particularly women and girls. And of course, the reality is that the country's economy based so much on international humanitarian aid. But will the international community present a united front on this issue? Just in the last few days alone, the British government sent a delegation to Kabul. This is the first time since the fall of Kabul, to discuss the humanitarian crisis and the safe return of British citizens. They also said, yes, we did raise women's and girls' issues and asked that their rights be protected. But again, it comes as the French President Emmanuel Macron says all G7 countries, including the UK, should not recognise the Taliban unless there are guarantees about the treatment of women and girls. So at the end of the day, trade, money, finance is all going to be the deciding factor on whether this really is, whether the desire to protect women's rights is used as a tool in order to get something in return.
Annette, thanks for that. France 24's Annette Young, the host of the 51%.